Well, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reading again Civil Aircraft. You guys seem to like that book, so sorry for the absence of any reading this week. My birthday was last Sunday, and we had a nice big birthday party and everything, and my daughter was here, my granddaughter was here, and they left Monday, and it's been a rough week, so but we're back at it today. So we're starting back up with Imperial Airways, 1924 to 1939. Hopefully the sound's a little better today. I haven't liked how it's coming out in this camcorder, but we'll see. As commercial aviation spread its reach across Europe, so the hazards inherent to flying became apparent. Accidents through mechanical failure and navigation errors were frequent, and became apparent that the government backing might be necessary to help the continent's necessary airlines fund safer aircraft and develop new operational techniques. Various airlines already received subsidies on their cross-channel routes, and on January 2nd, 1923, the government began an examination of these subsidies as well as assessments of airline services. The conclusion was that heavier-than-air transportation, called the Imperial Air Transport Company Ltd, should be formed. The heavier subsidy company would absorb the country's major airlines. On March 31st, 1924, Imperial Airways was formed. At the same time, British Marine Air Navigation, Delmar Airways, Handley Page Airways, Transperth and Instorm Airlines all ceased to exist, being into the entire entity. Three of these carriers were all well established, the exception being British Marine Air Navigation, which had been flying its Southampton Greenwich route with submarine sea air flying boats only since September 25th, 1923. Along 18 ex-military aircraft, DH-34s, 2 Sea Eagles, and a Veman commercial, a mouth ellipse, while pilots agreed on salaries and administration issues were straightened out before service began. Imperial first route outing was the Canadian Croydon to Paris run, flown on April 26, 1924. While the government backing the airline was quick to propose on routes from the UK to Amsterdam, Basel, Berlin, Brussels, Cologne, and Zurich, as well as Paris, as its success became evident, it was able to dictate its requirements to the aircraft industries, commissioning aircraft that were not only more efficient and safer, but which were not also suited to its ambitions to serve the furthest corners of the empire. Now, in the United States, and I'm sure it'll get there, the United States formed a government body that subsidized aircraft before Federal Aviation Administration. There was an agency that subsidized and supported airlines and airline growth. And there's still small little airlines like here in Montana that fly from Billings to all the tiny little airports, so people can get all to those tiny little airports and back. And the government helps subsidize those airlines to help keep them in business and keep those necessary flights flying. But I'm sure the book will get into that. And right now we're looking at an Arvo 618 built in 1930. And you can read it, take a look at it. Very interesting. Oop, I lost my page. Okay, we'll keep going. New decade, new types. Several significant new aircraft types appeared in the 1920s. In some instances, the machine itself was imported in signaling the arrival of future force and aviation. In other cases, the aircraft heralded a revolution in itself. The Ant-1 of 1923 was built an unremarkable one-off single-seater built to demonstrate the metals manufacturing technique of its designer, Andrea Nukina Tulova. Tula Design Bureau was in full swing in 1925 building the first series of military and commercial aircraft. That continues today. Also of tremendous significance, at least 4 general and sporting aviations, de Havilland's latest creation, the DH-60 Moth, and flew for the first time in 1925. Of more importance for the airline, the Super Fokker FV-2A3M flew later that same year in 1925. With American first airliner of quality, the Ford Trimotor joined in 1926. Now, something that hasn't talked about in aviation development is aircraft development. Some of the first aircrafts actually blew up. Probably ain't the best word, because they figured out they had to pressurize the aircrafts and that the metal would fatigue and collapse. So they had to design the aircrafts to take the rigors of going from 0 altitude to 5, 6, 10,000, 20, and current flights, commercial flights, flying at 30,000 feet. So they had to do a lot of development and trial through error, and disaster is how they found out some of the issues. But here is a Penguin BR-19 Super Binion from 1929, and the bottom one's a Bernard 191 GR from 1929. There's the information. You can pause it, take a look at them. Hopefully you're learning and enjoying these. Airline development. Queens and North Territories Aerial Service, the Australian national carrier, was formed in 1920, while the Soviet Union's first flight, the Dopplerite, was established in 1923. Daimler Airlines expanded its scheduled service to Berlin in 1903 before disappearing in the Imperial Airways a year later. As British desperate and struggling airlines were brought together as one company, by 1929 Imperial had expanded sufficiently to begin the first commercial flights from London to India, building on the pioneering 0400 flight of 1918. In the United States, experimental airmail flights bore fruit as the first commercial mail routes were opened in 1926. Saying that's what they first did to help support the airlines and development is they got government contracts to deliver the mail from east to west coast and all over the U.S. They would literally just take off the land, and like today, they still deliver some mail by air. Now, long since forgotten all but airline history, Werner Air Service became United Airlines in 1933. So Werner Air Service was the first one to do the air service in 1926. Now that you can actually read, take a gander, pause it, and go through and enjoy all those histories. That's a lot. You guys can pause it, go through it. Hopefully I'm not getting it too close so you can't zoom in, read. I'll see when I get it uploaded to my computer. And major carriers that survive today. Another North American most historical important flights, Pan American Airlines, flew its first service in 1927, operating to South America. Pan American Airlines is no longer in service. I'm sure it'll get to that. Let's see here. I don't see it on the list above, but that's everything through 1929. Pioneers and Explorers, the next little section we got going. Right here. So we'll just get going. The 1920s were also a time of great piloting by individuals and crews. Aircraft had already been flown over huge distances, but now pilots were looking to cover long distance ranges non-stop. Prize money, fame, and personalities were often at the heart of the attempts, although many were also sponsored by the military, because the military wanted the planes for themselves. Whatever the motivation, they served the airlines well, publicly demonstrating what air travel could do. The first of the great long-distance flights was that of Lieutenant Kelly and Margaret, who flew the Fokker T-2 nonstop from the United States in 1923 Another Fokker found fame in 1926 when Lieutenant Commander Byrd and Floyd Boynett flew 1,600 miles over a North Pole. Fokker, a C-2, and a EFV-23, respectively, completed further non-stop flight seats in 1927, flying from the continental U.S. to Hawaii, and in 1928, the first crossing of the Tasmanian Sea. Ooh, camera's going dead. So I guess that's where we stop here. The most famous long-range flight of the period, and perhaps the most famous ever, was Charles Lindbergh. He crossed the North Atlantic solo in a single-engine Ryan NYP on May 20th and 21st on 1927. That's Charles Lindbergh, first North Atlantic crossing. Just 8 years had elapsed since Alcock and Brown had struggled across to crash land in Ireland, but now Lindbergh made it to Paris, from New York to Paris, a global celebrity, but a typical history that second place is often forgotten. The Frenchmen Coste and Lebrix flew a first non-stop crossing of the South Atlantic in the frigate BR-19G biplane on 14-15 October, while the German-led crew completed the much more difficult east-west crossing of the North Atlantic less than a year later after Lindbergh's flight of 1928. Now, it's much harder to come from Europe and Paris and then to the United States because you're flying against the winds. My camera's about to go bad. Oh, we got to a new section. So next time we'll start off with North American developments. So, thank you for watching, and we'll be with you again next time. Thank you.